and people will probably come in while we're talking. So I'm very glad to host this discussion on interdisciplinary teaching. And the reason we suggested this topic for the Higher Education Council Conference is that we as a school that promotes a lot of interdisciplinary teaching encounter a lot of difficulties in promoting this agenda. As all of you know, interdisciplinary teaching, innovation, new kind of educational experiences, everybody is talking about the ability to do something new and different. But in reality, when you come to the classroom, when you come to the curricula, things are much less simple than they seem to be when you write your vision. So everybody's vision now includes at least 2 mentions of interdisciplinary teaching. But in reality, when you go and screen curricula, you find that a long history of higher education, of working along departmental lines, is still the reigning procedure in higher education. So what we find is, on the one hand, an important move towards acknowledging the importance of interdisciplinary teaching and different kind of experiences. And on the other hand, a long process of very slow change, both in the curricula and in process of accreditation. All of us work under a different system of accreditation, because soon I will introduce my guests. They are coming from all over the world, and different countries have different accreditation systems. But all of us, I think, face 3 problems that we would like to discuss here. First of all, you know, when you approve a program, an academic program, you are almost always committed to the program that you have approved in order to get a degree. If you want to inject innovative ideas into your curricula, there starts a very long process whereby you have to convince those who are giving you accreditation that you are still within the framework of what you have suggested. Chagit, here, it's all for you. You should sit. Professor Chagit Messer-Aharon is the head of the Higher Education Council, so this is actually, it's all for her. Almost. So I was starting to say about how, while we all acknowledge the importance of interdisciplinary studies, changing the curriculum is very, very difficult. And we're all bound to, or committed to, the initial way we have submitted our academic program, something that slows down innovation and actually makes the academic world, surprisingly, much more conservative, let's say, than the commercial world. So we see our students going to the commercial world, being able to do things that they are not able to do in the academic world. But initially it was the opposite. It was the academic world that should have been experimental, and you know, the world outside should be totally commercial. It's now, I think, not a very balanced reality, and it's balanced against higher education. The second thing is that trying to really create interdisciplinary experiences, as we know from Shankar, but from other places, it demands a lot of investment. I mean, if the Higher Education Council is really interested in interdisciplinary teaching, it should be taken into account also in the way we're funding teaching, because there's no interdisciplinary studies without, as we do, classrooms with 2 or 3 teachers in the same classroom coming from different disciplines. Otherwise, it wouldn't really be interdisciplinary. So the process is both a process of acknowledgement of the importance of interdisciplinary teaching and studies, a problem of accreditation, and a problem of financing. So we brought here a very distinguished panel, just by coincidence, all women. All of them have a lot of experience in running programs of interdisciplinary teaching and studies. And I'll just introduce them one by one, and then we will hold a short conversation on the issue. So Professor Julie Chen, she's the Vice Provost of the University of Massachusetts at Lowell, a very close partner to Shankar with a lot of experience in collaborative work and student exchange and developing mutual programs. Professor Anne Boddington, she's the Dean of the Faculty of Arts in the University of Brighton, virtually an honorary citizen of Israel. She's here quite a lot. She's working with us on the Tempus program, but she's very involved in higher education in general and in higher education in Israel. Professor Bridget Mager, she's a service designer from Cologne International School of Design, another partner in our Tempus program, and we've learned a lot from her about service design, something that is quite new for us. And last but not least, Paola Bertola from the Polytechnicum in Milano, again, a strategic partner of Shankar. We're working together a lot through the Tempus, but now I think we are expanding our collaboration. We are just actually coming out of a week of wonderful collaboration around the Tempus program that we are running in Shankar, thanks to the leadership of Tami Varshavsky, who is here. And the first question I would like to ask you is, for you, what are the best experiences of interdisciplinary teaching and curricula building that you have experienced, and what can we learn from your experience in your own institution? So Julie, maybe we'll start with you and we'll just go in this direction.
Yes? Okay, great. So thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here today. I could probably speak loud enough. Is that better? Ah, there we go. Okay, so thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here today. This is actually my first time in Israel, so I'm very much enjoying the visit. As Dr. Tamur said, Shankar and UMass Lowell have had a wonderful relationship, which I think speaks to this theme of interdisciplinary, because it started out in terms of plastics engineering as the focus, and even up to, I think, a couple hours ago, when we had some wonderful presentations, I think it brought about how can we get more of the engineering and the arts together. And I think at UMass Lowell, one of the things that we have found is that, as I think everybody else finds, one of the challenges is that in accreditation there is a lot of these structured coursework and programs that need to be covered, at least perceived to be covered, and how do you include more of these opportunities for the students to get exposed to a lot of different things. We tend to teach things in silos, mechanics, fluids, structures. And one of the things that we've seen in terms of our experiences is to try to get opportunities for the students to experience, even as freshmen, different applications of those different fields. And so I'll just give one quick example. We've recently started a program for undergraduate research, which allows the students to work with faculty in the labs. And if they work on fields such as nanotechnology, which is an area that is very big at our university, what we find is that freshman year, they're learning calculus, biology 1. But how that applies to the real world is enhanced because they're working in a lab, and I'll give one example. Sophomore student, Aaron, is working with a startup company that is an incubator on our university. And basically, as part of that opportunity, he not only gets to do work related to nanotherapeutics, nanoparticles for delivering drug therapies, he sees the business side of things, of how a startup company works. And so I think this is one example of how the classroom work is extended beyond the classroom in these undergraduate research opportunities in order for them to see how broadly companies, in fact, need to look at problems in order to solve some of these challenging problems. So just as one example.
Thank you.
Well, it seems a bit strange. Thank you for inviting me here. And it seems like a familiar and unfamiliar discussion in Israel. I'm going to speak in defensive disciplines first, in order to understand what interdisciplinarity means. I very much am a supporter of disciplines, and I think we have to be really clear that in order to have interdisciplinarity, you need a discipline. And the question for higher education is where you deliver disciplines. I think particularly in a world where social media and almost everything else in our identity is scattered across the world, either virtually or really, you need to kind of say, well, actually, I need a discipline to bring to a table in any interdisciplinary conversation. So that's my first point, really. I think the other thing I'd say about it is I would not do it through subject. I would do it through pedagogy, which flips the thing on its head, rather. Everybody talks about interdisciplinarity in terms of subject, what we bring together to do what. If you teach business, like I teach design, actually interdisciplinarity happens. And it happens because you share a conversation and you start to share a language. And one of the things about disciplines is they're not that old. They only started about 100 odd years ago. We built and we set in stone and in glass and in steel and in our pedagogies, which look like 19th century factories, all of them, a whole series of structures that we are now trying to work our way out of. And so my take on it would be, actually, if I look at my nephew who is now 12, what will he be learning and how will he be learning it? And I think that raises some really big questions about innovation in institutions and to look to the future in different kinds of structure. And the thing we never look at is our structures or the way we deliver them. We talk about classes in this and classes in that. But just look at the underpinning infrastructure in higher education and say, is that the place to start? Or is that the place that will come quite naturally? So for me, interdisciplinarity is something we have to relearn, not something we have to learn. And to do that, we have to look at the pedagogies and the infrastructures that we put in place in universities.
Well, thanks, Anne. It's a really great point. If we do not keep this in mind, we might end up to have universal dilettantes all over the world instead of T-shaped people, as we call them in the design world. T-shaped people meaning that they are really deeply rooted in one discipline, but at the same time stretching their arms to the side in order to connect to other disciplines and to learn and involve and integrate. So I would like to touch 3 examples that I find really inspiring. As the Vice Dean of our faculty, I had the chance to build something that we call the Service Science Factory. And it is located not at my university, but at the University of Maastricht. And it is a place where, let's say, the knowledge triangle comes to life. It is an innovation center where companies can place their challenges and interdisciplinary teams voluntarily come together in order to work on those challenges. And my university is one among 8 others that encourage their students to participate in that Service Science Factory. And they get their ECTS, but they have a lot of freedom to choose which projects they want to participate in. The time schedules are extremely flexible. They have to be extremely flexible in order to work on these real-world problems. And the students get all the support from the professors in their home universities when it comes to positioning themselves with their own discipline within these interdisciplinary teams. which is not always easy. For my design students, that often means that the teams ask them to make the PowerPoints look nice. And I have to tell my students, no, you are not going to polish the PowerPoints. You are going to work as a designer on strategies, on concepts, on in-depth exploration. So it's real-world learning and in interdisciplinary teams, and they come out of these projects very enriched in understanding what others do, how they are seen by others, and best case finding ways how they can bring their competencies into these teams. So I think this is a really good example, but of course it escapes a bit the boundaries of our universities. And if we look at the university world, we find it sometimes a bit more difficult to really fill this interdisciplinarity with life. I assume that you have heard about Aalto University. Aalto University in Helsinki in Finland has torn down the borders between the departments a couple of years ago. So they integrated the economies, the engineering and the design and arts department into one big university and having a strong strategy in interdisciplinarity. I think they have succeeded in many ways, but they still stumble over difficulties because people speak different languages, people have their silos, people have their own preferred agendas. So even though they tore down the walls between the faculties and made them one big campus, they are still struggling. So I'm not going to go deeper into this. I would like to pinpoint one last example, and it's my own university. In my faculty, design, we have a clear positioning. We say we are integrated, interdisciplinary and international. That's who we are. And in this strategy we are supported strongly by our university management. I think the design is the most advanced field in this area, but the university wants to support the interdisciplinarity as a whole. One thing that we are doing right now is the so-called profile square weeks. It's a funny name. It means basically that 2 weeks every semester are completely blank and only reserved for interdisciplinary activities. So the university as a strategy basically says every faculty has to keep these 2 weeks free from any projects, lectures, seminars. These 2 weeks are reserved for interdisciplinarity. What happens in reality? Nothing much. Business as usual. Except that there are some, little things. And I think these are seeds that are going to grow. So, for example, 2 weeks ago when we had these Profile Square Weeks, we had a conference, an interdisciplinary conference, where we invited representatives from all faculties on a specific topic. And after that conference, suddenly there is active collaboration. The colleagues are contacting each other to start interdisciplinary projects. So I think top-down is one important way to go if you want to have interdisciplinarity. But there are so many ways to sneak around the policies and the regulations if you don't want it. So you have to at the same time encourage the bottom-up process and make people want it, taste it, like it, desire it. So I think this is maybe something that we have to keep in mind.
Thank you. So I'm very interested in the points that were brought to the table, and particularly Anne said that if we want to work on an interdisciplinary type of pedagogical model, we need anyway disciplines, and actually the example that I want to bring is the one related to Politecnico experience, where we had a long discussion about how to implement interdisciplinary programs within our structure, which is basically oriented towards free type of education. One is engineering in all its branches, the other one is architecture, and the third one is design. And our choice was to establish not an interdisciplinary program which was aimed to involve undergraduate or postgraduate students, but something that could offer to our best students an option to get an education on interdisciplinarity while they were continuing and getting their disciplinary education. And this also was aimed to give our best students the chance to find within the university opportunities that we were aware they were looking for outside the university, because at a certain point we observed that the best students, while they were doing their master programs, they were also collaborating with companies, doing things outside the university. So why we shouldn't offer a challenging experience within the university and taking advantage of their willing to be and to act as differently as already professionals or innovation leaders in a sense. So we started a program which is actually a special program that actually select the best 150 students among two universities, Politecnico di Milano and Politecnico di Torino, the best one attending all the type of master programs within the two universities, so architectural programs, design programs, and engineering programs. They are selected, and if they can enter, they have to follow additional 30 credits during their 2 years. They have some benefits, which means that they have scholarships and support from the university, but they have also to fulfill some requirement. That means that they cannot take more time than our regular students to follow this program, and they have to stay on an average grade, which is quite demanding and high. And this program is not only multidisciplinary because we select students from different backgrounds, but it is because of the type of courses and experiences that we offer them during these 2 years, additional activities. Basically, there are a few classes, few courses, let's say it's not really classes, which are resident courses in the sense that we take all the students with many difficulties in managing and matching the different calendars. We take the students in a location, and for 1 week they take intensive seminars on topics and subjects which are actually interdisciplinary in their nature, like talking about sustainability on different perspectives, the engineering and technical one, the social and so on and so forth, or decision-making process, or innovation management. So all subjects that can be relevant for all type of professionals and people. And then half of their task is devoted to multidisciplinary projects. So they are organized in team with students with different background, tutored by professors coming from different departments, and they work on a subject which is given by an external institution or companies, and they have to deliver real projects and real solutions to the companies. So this is actually our experience, which is something that take advantage of the fact that these students are excellent students and also have excellent disciplinary rooted knowledge, but at the same time we offer them the chance to open up their skills and their mind towards a context of job and professional world which is requiring more and more attitude in team working and within complex situation where managing innovation is something which is more and more difficult. So this is what we decided in terms of going into the interdisciplinary paradigm, but as was introduced before, for example, there are other cases like the Alto School or in the United States, this school at Stanford, which went into another direction and decided to approach the subject of interdisciplinarities within each programs, also at undergraduate level. I think that these type of different approaches that are emerging globally are now the main issue and topic for reflection. So do we have to think of this paradigm as something that will, in a sense, substitute the traditional disciplinary organization, or do we have to integrate what is emerging with anyway continuing to enrich a specific and focused and vertical research within each different disciplinary field? So I think that this question is probably the most relevant now, and we actually do not have any specific answer because it's an ongoing phenomenon and each institution is finding its own way of trying to cope with this challenge of interdisciplinarity in a different way.
Thank you. I just, when Bridget said that they have dedicated 2 weeks for interdisciplinary and nobody came. So we had we initially had the same experience. I want to share with you that we developed a system that works in Shankar now for the 2nd year, something that we call Gem Week. It's only 1 week, but at that week we do only interdisciplinary workshops. Everybody in the school is doing interdisciplinary workshops, and as I often say, it was mostly important for the faculty, because when we speak about disciplines, people are locked within the disciplines. Usually they never cross the corridor or go down the stairs to meet the people from another department. And when we decided to do it, we did 2 things. We actually paid the faculty to do it. I'll speak in a moment about incentives. I mean, how do you draw faculty to do something that is not within their comfort zone? But we also created a buzz, and we created some sort of a speed dating between the faculty so they can meet each other and submit workshops. At the end of the day this year, we had 25 workshops, 600 students participated in this week. I wish we had the video here. I don't know if you can upload it here. But it was really fun, interesting, and the most, I think, important pedagogical lesson is, which was very difficult for the faculty, was that you can allow students to do something that is experimental without grading them. Because people said, so how would we grade them? According to design, according to engineering, according to innovation, according to participation. And it's very hard for universities just to let go. Let's do something experimental. Let's just not think about it as a regular course. And the question I want to raise, which follows this, is there are 2 traditions of higher education. One, I think, maybe the ultimate example is the Bauhaus, where people would study very basic, intellectual foundations, and then they had to experiment, and they had to do things, and they had to work, and they had to invent, and the curricula wasn't structured. The other one, I think the American system is very structured. Somewhere, I'm a graduate of the British system, which is somewhere in between, or used to be somewhere in between, much more flexible, less flexible today. And the question is really, can we allow ourselves, or how do we teach ourselves as managers of higher education, as faculty, to inject into our teachings free time, workshops, open experimentation, things that we really find hard to evaluate and find hard to accreditate. Now with the Bologna process and the new accreditation system that takes into account something I think we should all think about, not only how many hours we are in the classroom, but how many hours of learning do we invest in something. Do we have, and again I think it's a strategic issue and it's a structural issue that we don't know how to deal with. Do we have ways of producing within our departmental traditional teaching ways of creating incentives for the staff to get out of their profession and do something new, and be allowing students different kind of experiences? And you all spoke about different kind of experiences, but really making it part. I mean, again, if you go to even now to the AA, to the Architectural Association in London, you'll see the same thing. Very thin curriculum, a lot of experimentation. So are we ready for that, or is it too much to demand? Julie, back to you. Here it comes.
All right, let me just. So I think that's an excellent question, because you're right. Our curriculum is very structured, and just as an example, a mechanical engineer going through an undergraduate degree has, in the whole 4 years, 3 elective courses. Okay, the rest are pretty much structured. Now, where they tend to incorporate the interdisciplinary is there's a senior capstone course, right, which is where a lot of that interdisciplinary, you bring in the economics, the sustainability, and all those things. But I think there is definitely a shift towards wanting to do more, right? Not leaving it to that one senior year class when suddenly, you know, the light is supposed to go on because I can see how all these things come together. But it is a challenge because of accreditation. And I think that what we are seeing, or one possibility, is in terms of having, I think it has to be project-based. Whether or not that can be incorporated within courses as a project that's part of the course is a way that a lot of the classes have tried to get more interdisciplinary. And I think where we have an opportunity now is the change in the structure of how we are teaching. So it's shifting away from I stand in front of a class and I lecture material to more of the student having responsibility before they come to class to review the basic material and have the class be more of the interactive. And that's where I think it's more possible to bring in the interdisciplinary, even though we have a fairly structured curriculum.
Do you have the authority to change the curriculum? And do you have the same problem we have here, that if you change the curriculum, you won't be registered as an engineer? So it's not only the higher education institutions, but also the profession.
Right. So there is a, certainly for accreditation, there are certain content that has to be covered. So you can't say, well, I'm not going to teach in mechanical engineering. You can't say, well, our students don't have to learn fluids. They have to get some level of fluids. Where there is some flexibility is within fluids, there's a wide range of topics to cover. Do you have to cover everything in the textbook? And I think that's where there's some flexibility in terms of understanding what's the basic fundamental disciplinary knowledge that has to get covered. But layered on top of that, do the students actually retain more and understand how to apply that knowledge by exposing them to some of these more project-based activities.
But if you decide, sorry, but if, yeah. Because I think this is a crucial question to all of us, so actually do take it into account when you have, if you decide, I don't know, you sit together, the people in the profession, in the university, and decide to strike out 5 courses in engineering in order to have 7 electives. Can you do it, and what will happen to your degree?
Okay. Okay. The Bauhaus, one of the great leaders of the Bauhaus said something which I think is really important for today. The more that is taught, the less that is learned. And I actually will put my hand up and say, I think that's absolutely right. And I don't think the question is about input. I think it's about output. It's about what people learn, not what people are taught. I was taught more by every student I studied with, and I'm taught more by my students now than I was ever taught by any teacher. And that's a really important issue. So for me, it's very much about what is learned and how you learn that. Actually, all the information's out there. And when you have a course, the question is, what has to be learned, i.e. what is the output and what is the outcome? The output is what you assess, the outcome is what is learned. And actually you can still have the course, but it's where that learning happens. And I would say that learning happens all over the place. And there might be a question about why on earth do we need a university in a building? And there are questions about that are really important. And I think we do need buildings. I'm an architect, I would say that. But I do think, even in professional courses, the issue is what you are expecting your students to know and learn, not how, I mean, how they're taught is another question. They may be taught online, they may be taught offline, they may be taught by each other. That's the issue. And the issue is how you construct a learning environment and a learning institution that allows that to happen and allows every discipline and interdisciplinarity to be part of the culture of the university, not a strategy. And I would not agree with something that said you force interdisciplinarity into a system. You don't need to. We are interdisciplinary by default. I am as much a product of science as I am a product of the arts, and that's because I'm a human being, and that's where I would leave it.
Well said, but I do believe that there is differences between disciplines on regards of skills and competencies. I think indeed that there are some disciplines where the amount of skills needed in order to perform is higher than in the field of design. I think in the field of design we are talking a lot about competencies, and when we founded our faculty many years ago, we strongly believed that all we need to do is to create an environment where we encourage the curiosity and the experimentation and the connectedness of our students. And when Bologna came, we were getting quite worried if Bologna would not kill this kind of curiosity and experimentation. So we worked around the regulations of Bologna quite successfully by fulfilling them and not fulfilling them at the same time. What I strongly believe today is that, yes, we have to go through the formalities of accreditation and re-accreditation. We are going through one right now. While I am here, we are presenting in our Senate the curriculum. But we have tried to keep windows open. So we have, for example, a window for self-initiated projects, and it gives 5 ECTS. We have a window for mobility, and it gives 8 ECTS no matter where they go, what they do. It's a mobility window, and it gets ECTS, and we do not control if they do this at our school or at another university or at some other non-educational institution. So they can learn and they can do where they think it's the best place for them. We do not give grades, only very, very limited, because we believe that grades kill curiosity and experimentation. So we have reduced the amount of grades given to an absolute minimum. We give feedback. We have mentoring system. We have feedback sessions after every seminar, after every project. So it's individual feedback, but not grades. And I think that's another part of this kind of like openness for interdisciplinarity. Yeah, so I think these are some very small aspects of for the question that you asked. How can we stay flexible and not lose our accreditation by designing flexibility into the system from the very beginning, I would say.
Yes, I agree with the fact that also for us the problem was not really the accreditation within the Ministry of University and regulation, but was more the rigidity that was part of a cognitive approach of people within the university and their openness to embrace new paradigms. I think that that was definitely the most challenging obstacle, not really accreditation, that as was introduced by Birgit, it can be interpreted in a positive way. We succeeded, for example, in creating programs which mix 2 different accreditations. So the students come out with accreditation for being graduated in design as well as in mechanical engineering. For example, this is a program in design engineering, and they get both the accreditation. We do have another one where they... this is a master program, so it's 2 year long. For example, within the master field, we did the same thing for management and design, and students get both the accreditation in management engineering and design. So doing these programs, actually the difficulties came creating programs where people were really willing to work together within a different pedagogical approach. Because if you just sum different disciplines in little modules, this is not at all a multidisciplinary program. So we wanted to create programs very much based on projects, field projects, so that we could have team teaching and people starting to create a dialogue and a common language, which is the major obstacle. For example, the simple meaning that us designer give to the word design is very much different to the meaning that mechanical engineer give to this same word. This is an example. Or innovation, another example. If we speak with our colleagues from management engineering, they give to this word a totally different meaning that we give as designers. So I think that this is one of the main obstacles that we faced. And another one is related to the fact that you cannot have relevant programs that are working in an interdisciplinary ways if you are not also doing research on interdisciplinarities, and you are not also implementing interdisciplinary research projects. And this is another issue, because our institution, for example, and the one I know, they for the majority of their resources and time, they work on very disciplinary research projects, also because people in their tenure track are pushed to publish on certain magazines as they get credits for that. So it's very difficult also to set up research programs which are fully multidisciplinary and creates multidisciplinary knowledge, and this is definitely another issue. So I believe that it's much more changing the culture of the academic than facing the issue of regulations.
Yeah, I think the last point you raised is very important, because the faculty needs to publish in the publication is very much disciplinary, and it's very, very difficult to publish, and there are very few interdisciplinary journals, and they're not very well considered as, highly considered for your promotion. It pushes the faculty to do disciplinary research, and it goes back to the question is, how do you acknowledge interdisciplinary teaching and research? How do you give some bonuses to people who do it? Because if at the end of the day they can't publish their findings in a journal that they think is an important one in their field, it could be a very difficult disincentive to do the kind of things that we are trying to promote. So we see that both accreditation and publication create a certain framework that captures the reality of the university, and in a way detaches this reality from what happens outside, because as Anne said, the world is interdisciplinary. Probably our students come to the university and they are interdisciplinary. Certainly our students today, they come and they are already within them, their own life experience, are very interdisciplinary. But then we demand them to detach themselves from this reality and go into something very narrow. And then immediately when they graduate, we ask them again to open up to a very interdisciplinary world, something that just makes the university as an sort of, I would say, awkward stage in life where you're not in connection with other fields that are your fields of interest. So maybe the last question that we have time to deal with is the good part of it. Where do you see the strategic opportunities? What would allow you in your university, in your own program, to do something that is out of the ordinary? What would be the kind of collaboration or funding that you are searching in order to be doing what we are dreaming here to do?
Well, I think to start with, we're going to borrow your idea about the jam session. So I think that that's an excellent example, because as we've all heard, ultimately, it comes down to the faculty buying in, because it's the faculty that have to get together and form the teams and to provide the environment for the students to be exposed to this interdisciplinary opportunity. So I think that the example of the Jam Week is one that's as important, I think, for bringing the faculty together to start seeding the effort. But I think, I think the next stage then is how do we expand, once you have the faculty together and starting to talk about how else we can do this and seed it throughout the entire 4-year curriculum, then I think the opportunity has to be where we can start figuring out at least in pairs. It's difficult to talk about a project and say, oh, we're going to cover everything, all the disciplines. But I think an opportunity that we have is that you can start thinking about at least pairs. So robotics with art, a materials course that then merges, again, let's say with example, with art. Can you do these pairwise opportunities that can be within a course structure where it's a little bit easier as you get started to give the faculty the credit for teaching the course, right? Because this is one of the barriers, right? The faculty needs to get credit for teaching the course. They need to be able to get credit for publishing. So one opportunity is to try to create more of these pairs, and then we can start to expand the sense of what's valued and what can be counted in terms of evaluation of the faculty.
I've got 6 points for the future, and I've got one thing to say about interdisciplinarity in research. One of the problems I think that's often cast at interdisciplinarity, I can't say it now, is that it dumbs down both disciplines. So it can be seen as the worst of both worlds. And one of the things about that is we have to know what quality looks like. We have to know what quality looks like in our own field and in other people's field, and you have to have the very best of everything. And I mean that in a really serious, if challenging way, which is that, you know, it's no good having bad quality science and good art, or, you know, great design and poor science. None of those things will work. So quality matters, and knowing what quality looks like at all times matters. And so there are some questions about making sure that it is quality, quality, and quality. And then you can publish in both fields. And certainly our experience has been, in research terms, that I write across design and business. I publish in the best journals in design and the best journals in business. And that's the important thing. And that's got to be the ambition every single time, that interdisciplinary debate is published in the very best of both fields and is recognized in the best of both fields. And I wrote down 6 things for the future. One is that interdisciplinarity is a kind of relearning. It's about transforming a culture. And there's a great quote which the Americans will know well, which says that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And I think that's a great quote, and I think it's true. You have to change a culture in order to put a strategy that underpins that. So it's a cultural issue, and I think it's a really important one. I think the other thing is about the porosity of universities. Universities have often become not only silos within themselves, but actually silos to the world outside. And one of the great things is to become a porous and a learning organization. An organization that learns as it develops its learning and its research. So that is really important for me. I think the other thing, which is sometimes about just changing the environment. My fantasy, and I'm halfway there, is to teach business at the Victoria and Albert Museum, which is a design museum, through the use of 30 objects. And that's all I want to do, is there are 30 objects that teach culture and business and how those two things came together through technology. as a vision. And that's the kind of thing I mean by changing the environment and saying, actually, maybe we don't even need the campus for that. Maybe we just need a damn good museum. And that's the kind of challenge. The other ones are the art of sustained partnerships. And what I mean by that is actually building learning, not doing just projects that stop at the end of the project. So how do you sustain a partnership, sustain a dialogue, and learn each other's language? And that's like going to any other country. And my Hebrew is terrible, and I do apologize. The other ones are develop careers, not jobs, because none of our students will have jobs for life. And so knowing your skills and knowing the knowledge you develop and knowing how to develop knowledge are part of that same process. And build for the future, not for the status quo. And that is about looking forward and looking at what our students and our currently probably our children might be doing in the future. And I'm damn sure it isn't what I did at university. And we have the responsibility for doing that better. So those would be my top tips.
Very nice, and I definitely agree about the cultural change. Arnold Gehlen, who is a famous German sociologist, once said that culture is the manifestation of all the man-made achievements, and these manifestations help us to make mankind survive despite our small souls. Which is very nice, because we are often too lazy to get up in the morning. We would probably not want to get out of our comfort zone if culture would not have these manifestations of what mankind has achieved. And this is, of course, institutions. It's all the artifacts like architecture. It's our technologies. It's our law. It's our language. And culture is our science. So basically culture surrounds us. And this is why I believe that if we want to bring interdisciplinarity to our universities, cultural change happens top down in a way. It happens by changing our departments. It happens by creating artifacts that are made for interdisciplinarity, and that can be a jam room. It happens by creating symbols like awards for interdisciplinarity. It happens by creating funding for interdisciplinarity. It's a money issue. So I think we have to check our university culture and see where can we make changes in these man-made manifestations of our achievements. But I truly believe that this is not all, because cultural change takes a lot of time. Until these changes have been really stabilized, time will pass by. And I think we need a change that comes faster. So I believe that each one of us, independent from these organizational changes, can make a difference by, for example, integrating interdisciplinarity in each single seminar or project or whatever we are doing, inviting experts from other disciplines, working with our corporate partners and making sure that they come together in interdisciplinary teams. We work a lot with projects in industry, and the silos there are often quite strong. So one of the credos that I have for my students is make sure that there is workshops with our company partners where the accounting department and the human resources development department and the IT department sit together at one table to frame with us the problem and the briefing. So I think this is just one example. There are many ways in day-to-day activities where we can bring interdisciplinarity into our universities. But as you said, and I strongly believe that the cultural change is something that has to happen. And I think, Julie, you are in a role to make these things happen. And I hope that you will get all the support you need to make it true.
So definitely interdisciplinarity is marking a shift from, let's say, disciplinary subjects such as fluids towards focusing on problems such as, for example, related to fluids, flooding problems and the preservation of territories. So in a sense, this shift is bringing back to the university the idea that can be an active entities also helping to face problems which are shared within the society. And this is much more relevant in terms of vision, because our perception living in the universities that during its evolution it transformed in something which main goal was keeping itself alive and reproducing itself, while it has a much larger goal and vision. And in terms of responsibility, it must be shared also by the external world. Interdisciplinary education involve a lot companies and institutions within the educational process, and they must be aware of the fact that it's not just because they can get nice ideas and suggestions, but it's because of the fact that the contemporary paradigms that we are living in, the complexity that we are facing is something that we must share in terms of responsibility in educating proper people to face this, and companies and institutions do have to take this responsibility, so to contribute to universities and their vision also in terms of being part of it and transferring to their future professionals and candidates a different approach and a different perspectives. So this is my thought, where my thought in this closure of debate.
Yeah, I just want to relate to the last point before I say 2 words in summary of our discussion and leave maybe a room for 1 or 2 questions. First of all, I'm totally in agreement with Paula that if you start with problems, then you get immediately into the interdisciplinary world. And I'll tell you a lovely story from yesterday. We were all working together in a workshop with Delta, the textile company, and they had brought up a problem. They are producing sportwears, and when you do sport, you are sweaty. And you know, for many people, it's an embarrassing moment, and they were trying to ask themselves, what can they do to prevent sweat? And they were trying to think about all sorts of interesting materials that you won't sweat while you're wearing them. But our students that work with them, some from chemical engineering, some from design, said to them, well, actually, you don't want to hide the sweat. Make the sweat into a design. And because the sweat has all sorts of, minerals in it, they created materials that are changing their colors due to the sweat. And then you get your shirt, and when you're running, actually on your back, you see, I don't know, a running man or a Delta sign or something. So what was so interesting about it is that the student didn't say, oh, this is the problem, I'll solve it. They said, you have a problem, but I have a totally different solution for you. And immediately they created something, and the company really loved it, that can take their product and, turn the weakness into something that is actually a virtue, and everybody would, would want to wear it. Another example was a company that came to us. They were doing plastic boxes, and they were asking questions about, what to do with their box, and they had a problem that people are stealing their boxes in order to put them on their bikes. And actually, the students came to them and said, oh, don't worry about the stealing. Take the people who steal the boxes, actually allow them to steal, but make them do out of these boxes all this wonderful thing and create a site where they can put all their new ideas, and then people will want to buy your boxes because they're, they're so useful for so many different purposes. So it is really, when you ask a question and people from different disciplines sit around the table, as we all say here, you get many answers, and these many answers could be very useful. But at the end of the day, these are beautiful experiences. I'm still thinking really about the strategy. I mean, we all now have done things that are working well. We don't have an institution that is doing that well, which is a different level or a different culture, doing something that is very inspiring and creating a new culture of learning is something different. And I would say that maybe the first thing we should all aim to do, I mean, all our institution and the people who are in the audience, is really to start to create, and I was thinking about it all this week, that we get such a wonderful experience for the students. I would like to start seeing workshops for the faculty. If we can get 3 people, leading people in our faculty, to come to a workshop and go through this experience we went through this week together, they will be our delegates when they go back home to create it. And slowly, slowly, this is the way you build leadership. And we very rarely use our faculty as leaders. We use our faculty as experts, but not as leaders of change. And this could be our next, where is Tammy? Tammy, the next campus. Maybe it should be about faculty, not about students, about how do you create among faculty the interest, the skill, the abilities to do those things. So we have 5 minutes if the audience wants to ask, comment, or 5 minutes is okay? Yeah. Please just introduce yourself. Wait. Slowly, loudly.
Hi. My name is Marissa Gross-Yarm. I'm the director of the National Erasmus Plus office. Instead of Tempus, now Erasmus Plus is the new program in the EU. I actually have 2 short questions, but you might have longer answers. Often, I believe when we discuss interdisciplinarity, we often talk about the idea of interdisciplinarity, but in practice we get multidisciplinarity. And I was wondering if you have some insight as we can ensure that there is really this discussion and collaboration between the disciplines instead of a student learning a bit of history and a bit of political science and a bit of philosophy. Which brings me to my second question. Most of the examples were given in the professional fields, engineering, design, architecture, business. Do you believe the same ideas apply to the humanities and the social sciences, or do you think that there's a different route that people coming from these disciplines should take in discussing interdisciplinarity? Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Yeah,
This one?
please.
Okay, so maybe I can just give a couple of quick things. So I agree with you about the comment about the multidisciplinary, because it is true. I mean, we've all seen it, right? You bring together 2 groups, and the art and design people are responsible for making things look pretty, and the mechanical engineers are responsible for making it function, right? But I think that the way to move that needle is in terms of defining the project in a more real-world sense. So I think these examples where the project is defined by a company that has a problem or somebody that has a problem that they want to solve helps to move beyond sort of the artificial interdisciplinary or artificial where it just stays 2 silos. So that's one comment in response. I don't know.
This might sound trite, and it's not meant to. The difference I would say between if we have to talk about disciplinarity and interdisciplinarity and multidisciplinarity is the professions are generally multidisciplinary. I think interdisciplinary is rather like chemistry. Once you've done it, you can't change it back. So once you've seen something through a number of different eyes, you will never see the same thing again. You will always see something different. And I think that's the difference. I mean, as an architect, I work in multidisciplinary teams all the time. But actually, when I work with philosophers, and I manage both, you know, they make me see things differently. That's their job. And actually, they do it really well.
You wanted to ask a question? Yeah.
Let's go for the next question.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hello? Yeah. I discern certain commonality in the presentations, which happily for me, they also are in harmony with our emphasis at the University of Massachusetts Lowell. So we focus on what we call learning through experience. Learning through experience means that students are always confronted and are expected to work with faculty mentors on problems of community, societal challenges, or problems of industry. And it's really, and I think almost every one of you mentioned that when you work on a specific projects. And so, from my perspective, I don't think we really need to change the entire curriculum. You just want to make sure that every curriculum has in it rich opportunities for students to tackle real-world problems. And these are usually applied projects. If it becomes a theoretical research problem, that's not going to get us into interdisciplinary learning. So I really think my own bias is really learning through experience, in addition to learning through the regular courses. And that can be simply integrated in the curriculum. And so in our engineering college, Julie missed that point. In our engineering college, we have 40 courses. Each of them has what we call service learning component. And so it actually was funded by the National Science Foundation to do this. So that means that all those courses, every student taking the course has to work on a specific project that addresses a community problem, a societal problem. And so, yes, you can have all those mechanical engineering curricula, but if you ask students to do specific projects, then you are providing them that real-world approach. Anytime you have a real-world problem, then you're going to require multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary solution. And so, but I notice a commonality, I believe, in really all the talks about, I call it learning through experience, but obviously you could use different terms for it. Yeah. You want one which works?
I can probably say with that. The one thing I'd say about that, which would be interesting to think about, is that there's very rarely a discussion about the relationship between teaching, learning, and research. The thing that brings learning and research together is asking damn good questions. And that's all you need to do in a university, is know how to ask very good questions. And that's what we learn together, and that's what we should be learning together.
There's a wonderful phrase, it's called the wicked problems. It's Horst Rittel, a German design theorist, who has framed it. He says, wicked problems are what we are facing today in society, in politics, in basically everywhere. And the thing about them is that they cannot be pinned down. You can only approach them and look at them from different perspectives, and you can never really solve them in the end. But the really important thing is that about 80% of the solution are already rooted in the framing of the problem. So framing the problem through different perspectives, through different eyes, is the only way that we can master, in a way, these wicked problems, as opposed to tame problems that are a lot easier to handle. So we have to teach our students, no matter when they come from, to be prepared for these wicked problems. And that is something that we encounter in humanities, just as in technologies or other disciplines. So back to your question, I think definitely in humanities we have to be prepared for wicked problems.
Yes, I totally agree. In the tradition of design education, actually learning through experience is a paradigm that has always existed, while the big change came in design school when we realized, as all the type of disciplines, that the type of problems that we were facing were actually changing scales, that we were facing problems that actually do not have a technological framework which was clear, no technological solution already done. It was not easy to understand the different type of stakeholders that were part of the problem. So many different type of interests. I made before the example of floodings, but this is related to any type of scale of problem that we are facing today. So the big change was exactly passing from the idea of creating something like executive problem solver to creating people able to frame problems and ask the proper question before. So what our students did the previous weeks were actually this type of task. So face a question which has been put within a context that has a narrow vision on its own reality, and reframing it within a larger context that can take under consideration a different system of the stakeholders, different feedbacks on a general, for example, environment and community and so on. So I think that this is a shift that we do not know really how to face, and interdisciplinarity is of course trying to give some answer. So for sure, learning for experience is important, but that's not really enough to understand how we can face this shift. And for sure, to go back to the question about humanities, that's a totally relevant issue. In design, there are many initiatives which are actually studying the relationship between humanities and design. There are some research laboratories which were created on this subject, because actually all the literature about innovation deals with the fact that innovation and also technological change is created also through social change and through cultural change, and sometimes it doesn't happen because social framework are giving constraints that we do not considering, for example. So I think that interdisciplinarity means really the collaboration between all the branches of our knowledge, and for sure humanities as well.
So thank you very much. I think I've learned a lot, and through working with all of you, and I hope that we will meet again in a few years and see that we've made some advances. So thank you very much for participating. Have a good day.